Hello guys, and welcome back to another video. We are back talking BMW today. So we're going to be talking about the BMW N47 and the BMW N57, so the 2 and 3 litre diesel engines from BMW, and I'm going to be showing you outside on my car how you can get these engines running perfectly. So let's get outside and let's get cracking. Okay then, we can see we have in front of me right here the BMW N47 engine found in my BMW 520d. Now this engine, the N47, is essentially the exact same engine design as the N57. The main difference obviously is the N57 is a 6-cylinder, but in terms of the bare engine, it's pretty much the exact same, shares many of the same components, and they share many of the same issues. Now the first thing that you'll hear of when you hear of the N47 or the N57 is timing chain failure. Now yes, it is a known fact that some of these engines do suffer from timing chain failure, but we are not here to talk about that today. I've made numerous videos now talking about the timing chain issue, and the main reason that these engines suffer from timing chain failure is a lack of servicing and a lack of oil changes in general. But in this video we are going to be talking about exactly how we can get these engines running perfectly and producing the full power that they should produce from factory. Now I am going to be completely speaking the truth. I'm going to be recommending some things that I would do, some things that I would not do, and probably some things that BMW themselves would not recommend. But from past experience, you know, working on this engine, having the entire engine out, doing a whole bunch of jobs on it, you know, I can really tell you some things that you should and should not do. Now then, first thing is first, I'm just going to go ahead and take the engine cover off just so we can see the engine a little bit better. Now then, let's talk about how we can get this engine running perfect. Now I've spoke about the timing chain issue, I've spoke about how it doesn't affect all cars, and I've spoke about how the main reason that the timing chain prematurely fails is the lack of oil changes. Now with that being said, if you intend on keeping this engine running for, you know, let's say 200,000-300,000 miles, you want to keep the car running on the road for a good amount of time, I would actually just go ahead and get the timing chain kit replaced. Yes, I know it is a lot of money, you're talking around the £1,000 mark, but you're not just getting the timing chain kit replaced. Obviously, you know, you are getting the full timing chain kit, so that is the 3 chains, that is 2 sprockets, 2 tensioners, the oil squirter, but you're also getting things like the, you know, the sump gasket, the oil pan gasket, you're getting the timing cover gasket replaced, you're getting the rocker cover gasket replaced, you're getting new seals on the injectors. Hopefully you're going to get the injectors reseated with, you know, all new seals. And obviously with all this you are going to get an oil and filter change, so it really doesn't sound that bad when you break it all down and when you actually think what you are getting for that kind of money. And so in my opinion, if you have the N47 or the N57 engine, it is just worth, you know, going out and getting the timing chain kit replaced, because then you can pretty much ensure that, you know, all of the gaskets on the engine have been replaced, and you then don't have the worry of the timing chain failing anytime in the near future. Now then, the next thing that I would recommend if you want your engine to run perfect and you want it to last, you know, say 200,000-300,000 miles, is considering removing the EGR system. As you can see, I have completely removed mine, and you know, when it comes to these engines in general, 90%, 80 to 90% of the issues are related to the EGR system or the DPF system, which I'm going to move on to in a short while. But removing the EGR is just going to mean that your intake manifold and your intake valves are not getting full of a sooty carbon mess, and so that obviously means, you know, less cleaning in the future, and it means that your engine can then breathe properly how it should. Now obviously I know there will be some people that disagree, you know, with the EGR removal, and that is completely fine, but just know that if you do want to keep your EGR system in place, you know, you do want to keep it functioning, you know, you will have the issue of your intake getting full of carbon, and you will need to remove it periodically to clean it out and ensure that your engine is getting the correct airflow that it needs. Now then, we'll talk about the DPF system. So it is going to be in one of two places on this engine. So it's either going to be on the downpipe along with the catalytic converter, or it's going to be in a center section. Now, don't get me wrong, these engines can run great with the DPF system still in place. Obviously, it can still run at full power, but it is to be noted that you do need to take it on regular long journeys, and you do need all of these supporting systems to be running 100% for a regen to occur. And if you are not regenerating the DPF, you know, on a regular basis, that's when you can potentially get big issues, you know, like destroying your turbo for, you know, too much back pressure from the DPF. And that's kind of why I decided to remove mine completely, just so I didn't have that issue arising in the future. And I'm sure my engine has thanked me for it. So like I said then, with the EGR system removed, with the DPF system removed, that is pretty much 80% of the issues with this engine now completely wiped out. Now, whether or not you do decide to remove the EGR or the DPF, that is obviously up to you. I would, however, recommend removing the intake manifold, because, you know, for sure this is going to be completely full of a sooty, oily carbon mess, and in my opinion this should be cleaned out periodically, you know, or at least after you have removed your EGR system. This should be cleaned out because, you know, obviously with all that soot, carbon and oil in there, it is somewhat going to be restricting airflow, and it's going to mean that you're not going to be able to, you know, make the full power that the engine should. Now, along with the intake manifold, you also have the option of cleaning the intake ports on the cylinder head itself. Now, that is something that I would recommend doing as well if you have the time and patience, because again, you know, with all of that clean, with a clean airflow to your engine, you know, you're going to be making the power that it should. Now, I think it goes without saying that, you know, probably the most important thing when it comes to the, you know, running of these engines, you know, to get them running perfectly, really is the maintenance, you know, is the servicing, is the changing of the oil and the oil filter. Now, with these engines, I'd recommend changing the oil and filter for, you know, good quality stuff every 5,000 to 6,000 miles. And obviously with the oil, you know, we have the coolant as well. For whatever reason, people seem to think that, you know, coolant, antifreeze, whatever you want to call it, seems to last forever, which it does not. If you have ever drained the coolant from one of these engines and it is still on the original stuff, you will see that it is very, very dirty and contaminated. So I'd recommend changing the antifreeze coolant on this engine, you know, every 3 to 5 years. You know, coolant, antifreeze, it isn't expensive, so to do a flush every few years or so is really going to benefit your engine and ensure that your cooling system is working as it should as well. And of course, it's a good idea to keep on top of other things like your ancillaries, you know, ensuring that you have a new drive belt kit, so the belt itself, the automatic tensioner, the idler pulley, and I'd recommend replacing the crankshaft pulley down there at the bottom as well, because that will fail around the 150,000 mile mark. And of course, swapping out things like your power steering fluid if you want your power steering pump to stand the test of time. Now then, I think the main issue, the main reason why these engines get a bad reputation is simply down to the fact that people do not want to spend money on them. I think that if you buy a car, if you buy an engine that has, you know, let's say 100,000 miles plus on, you should expect to spend some money on that, and you should overhaul the common problems that that engine, you know, generally has. So when you buy the car, it is a good idea to have some money set aside and, you know, put everything right that is wrong with the engine. Now, with that being said, these engines, the N47 and the N57 engines, are not expensive engines, you know, to maintain. They are really not. When you compare them to the likes of a, you know, a V8 or a V10 engine, you really need to consider yourself lucky. And, you know, to rectify many of the common problems on these engines, you really do not have to pay much at all, but they definitely do need some money spending on them, and I would recommend doing that first when you buy the car to save yourself many problems later on down the line. Okay then guys, so to summarize, to get these engines running perfectly, you know, to get the N47, the N57 producing the power and running reliably for a very long time, there is, you know, a few main things that we really need to do. The biggest thing is, of course, changing the oil. I cannot stress it enough. The majority of the issues when it comes to the bare engine, you know, when it comes to parts wearing out, is a lack of oil changes. BMW made a massive mistake when they recommended changing your oil out every, you know, 18,000 miles. I'd recommend, like I said, every 5,000 to 6,000 miles. You know, could it be a bit overkill? Maybe, but you know, the cost of oil and an oil filter is very cheap. The cost of a new engine is not, so I'll just put that out there. Now the next thing when it comes to the smooth running of these engines is potentially, you know, rectifying a few of the emission control devices, you know, the effects that they have. So, you know, obviously you can go down the route of deleting your EGR and your DPF. Now that's what I've done. I can understand why people are kind of against it. You know, I respect your decision either way, but just know if you do have these emission control devices on your engine still, that you are going to have issues with them for certain later on down the line, and they will restrict how many miles you will get out of that engine ultimately. And I guess after that, you know, it really just comes down to, you know, looking after your engine, you know, replacing parts when they need replacing. So, you know, just know that things like glow plugs, they are not going to last forever, so it's probably a good idea to change them every once in a while. I'd recommend changing glow plugs every 60 to 80,000 miles, and at that mileage you're gonna, you know, kind of ensure that they are not going to be too seized into the head to remove. So if you are beyond this mileage now, then I would recommend changing them. I changed them out on 120,000 miles or so, and they came out, you know, relatively easy. I obviously have a full video on how to remove them, but yeah, you know, just doing basic things like this, like changing the drive belt kit, you know, ensuring that all of your pulleys are moving correctly, changing the rest of your fluids, like your coolant, like your power steering fluid. You know, this is really just basic stuff. You know, I don't know why people have kind of got the impression that you can just, you know, buy a car, you know, have an engine and just run it forever without doing any maintenance whatsoever. You know, if you have a leak, you need to fix it. You can't just go with a quick, cheap fix. So yeah, I guess the main thing is just know that you are going to have to spend some money. You know, kind of try to be efficient and couple multiple jobs into one, and yeah, just really look after your engine, and it will reward you for sure, because these engines from standard even do produce a decent amount of power and a very good amount of efficiency. Now then, I hope this video has been somewhat helpful. I know it's kind of been a little bit all over the place, but I just wanted to kind of you know, give it to you guys off the cuff. But I hope you guys have enjoyed it. Please remember to give this video a like, leave a comment down below, subscribe if you have not already done so, and I will see you all in that next one. Peace.